Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Monday, April 26th, and we're breaking down this 9-game main slate that we have over on DraftKings. It's also Corbin Burns Day, and he's been one of the best pitchers to watch in baseball since last season, so I'm looking forward to a good matchup versus Miami. I'm sure you guys are as well. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. And while you're at it, you might as well hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And if you want to follow me over on social media, the handle's in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want help with the channel over on Patreon, join a community of several hundred members. Link is down below for that, for projections, optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. The link is down below, and this is all updated throughout the day. But I think that's it for the shameless plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as per usual, we will start with the pitchers and move on to the bats. And I got a nice little handful of pitchers here that I do think are very viable today. We'll start up top with Corbin Burns, $10,400. Very expensive, but the way he's been pitching, he should probably be closer to $12,000. And the thing I'm noticing with DraftKings this year, so far I should say, is that they're not really pricing up these ace-level pitchers, so you can kind of get discounts on them. Even though it doesn't look like a discount, $10,400 for the way Corbin Burns has been pitching so far this year, it does seem like a steal because he's pitching like DeGrom, and even then DeGrom isn't overly expensive. I think the last time he pitched, he was like $10,900, if I remember correctly, which is just insane. So let's just keep using these aces at these relatively cheap price points. It's a good matchup here versus Miami. And Burns, I think he's had like 30 points in every single start so far. He's been absolutely amazing. He has yet to walk a guy so far. I mean, he has just been absolutely incredible. Only a 2.82 implied team total against him. Heavy favorite, 8K prop over in Vegas. Would not be surprised if he surpasses that in this matchup versus Miami. And since last season, 1.61 ERA, 2.48 xFIP, 2.57 Sierra, 39% K rate, which is even better than his 30, I think it was 38% last year is what he was sitting at, and you would have thought that would come down so far, but it's not. It's actually up, and he has 0 walks this season. Absolutely no walks. He has been flawless with his command. Obviously, that's not going to keep going. He's not going to not walk a guy all season long, unless he does something absolutely incredible, but it's not going to happen. But still, the walks are going to come, but even then, he's just been absolutely elite. Only a 20% hard contact rate, gets a lot of ground balls, doesn't give up any homers. He has been flawless in the matchup versus Miami as a righty. It's pretty good. They have a 25.7% carry, which I know does show up right here, or not right, red here, which would indicate bad, but it's only looking at 4 teams here, and all these teams do strike out quite a bit. So a 25% carry, it's still a plus matchup here for Burns. Only a 104 ISO, 80 WRC plus, 280 WOBA. And the batting average is pretty high, but again, batting average has been pretty high so far this year because it's smaller sample sizes, so obviously guys' numbers are going to be a bit inflated here. I'd prefer if the game was in Miami because it's a pitcher's park, and I know Milwaukee's a hitter's park, but I don't care. It's Corbin Burns. He's probably going to have another 30-plus point game, and I'm all about that, even though his price is a little bit more expensive than these other pitchers, but I do think he is worth it. I'd say he's the most stable pitcher on the slate. Trevor Rogers, $8,400 in the same game, just on the opposite side, and he's been pretty good so far this year. The strikeouts have been there, and since last season, he's got a 32% K rate and a 50-inning sample size, and he's had 2 okay games and 2 pretty good games so far. In this matchup versus Milwaukee, they're not a very good team. Like, they're a team that's got like good star players in Corbin Burns and Christian Yelich, and outside of those guys, they're an absolute dumpster fire. I mean, there's a couple of other good players for sure, but it's just their team sucks outside of quite a few players, and I mean not even quite a few, just outside a few players. And I think Trevor Rogers can have some success in this matchup because so far this year, the Brewers versus lefties, they have a 32.1% K rate. They're walking quite a bit, and the batting average, WRC plus, and WOBA and ISO numbers aren't that bad. But if he can just rack up the strikeouts and not get knocked around a little bit, I think Trevor Rogers is in a really good strikeout spot here, and strikeouts are king in DFS. So even if he does give up a run or two, if he can rack up like 8+ strikeouts, I mean, I would still not mind paying $8,400 for him. Now, he probably won't get the win because I think the Miami Marlins offense gets absolutely shut down. So if you're looking for win equity, don't think you're going to get it here from Trevor Rogers. Only a 3.6 implied team total against him, but only a 38% chance for a win. 6.5 K prop is good over in Vegas. If you're looking for a win, he probably won't get it because Burns is more than likely going to mow down this lineup, and hopefully the Brewers can, pick up at least a couple hits and a couple runs, and if they do that, he will probably pick up the win unless the bullpen happens to fall apart, which I wouldn't imagine it would. So I do like Trevor Rogers. Can struggle with walks since last season, double-digit walk rate, but I'm mainly just hunting strikeouts here for the most part. And Charlie Morton, $8,000 going up against Chicago, which it's kind of a similar play to Rogers where I'm just trying to hunt strikeouts. The Cubs have, they have decent players in their lineup: Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras, but this is a team that is striking out quite a bit versus righty so far this season. It just got mowed down by Brandon Woodruff. I think they didn't score any runs yesterday either. I mean, I would say Brandon Woodruff's a better pitcher than Charlie Morton, but still, they have a 27% K rate to righties this season, and the other numbers aren't that bad, but I still think Charlie Morton's got at least a little bit of strikeout upside here, and if he can rack up like 6, 7 plus strikeouts here, I mean, his K prop over in Vegas is at 6.5, 23.6 implied team total against him, decently heavy favorite as well, because Zach Davies is pitching for the Cubs. I do feel like the Braves can knock him around a little bit, so I think if you're looking for some win equity, unlike Trevor Rogers, I do think Charlie Morton possesses that, and his numbers are fine. 26% K rate, he's got pretty good control for the most part, 10 Ks per 9, 4.4 ERA since last season, 3.74 xFIP, so you'd be getting a little bit unlucky there in that category. And Sierra is right on par with his xFIP, so I think Charlie Morton is a fine mid-range SP2 today, because I'm playing Corbin Burns. I mean, if you're doing like a full-on Yankee stack today or just a really expensive stack, yeah, maybe you'll have to get away from Burns in some lineups, but if you're someone that's playing one lineup or even 3, I feel like Corbin Burns needs to be in almost all of those lineups today. You're playing him in cash games because I think there's a strong chance he could approach 40 points today. Now, I say this and watch it be his first bad game in forever and he gets absolutely destroyed, but even then, I feel like his ownership will be high enough where it won't really matter too much. So if you're doing like a full-on expensive stack, yeah, you might have to take Burns out and just hope the bats explode. But for the most part, I want Burns in most of my lineups. Then Shohei Ohtani, $7,700. So last time he pitched, he was on a bit of a pitch count. I was looking for some news on that. I haven't seen anything definitive. I did see one person say he's going to be a full go today, but even then, at $7,700, if he's only limited to like 80 some pitches, I think last time it was 75. I think he approached 80. If he can get 80 plus pitches at this price point versus Texas, I think that's still fine enough. And I do think the Angels can pick up the win if he does go deep enough into the game. The problem is he's walking a ton of guys right now. He's not getting blasted or anything, but if he keeps walking guys, he's going to stop getting lucky and he's going to start giving up some runs. So that's the only concern I have. But I mean, obviously he's got great fastball velocity. He can throw the ball like 100 miles per hour. I mean, Ohtani is just an amazing player. He can hit 450-foot bombs, and then he can also pitch 100 miles per hour and strike Joey Gallo out. It's just insane the kind of player he is. But at $7,700, I do think he's very viable in a good matchup here versus the Texas Rangers. Since last season, though, it's a 10-inning sample size, and I think he only pitched, what, 1 inning last year? Might have been it. But so it's pretty much just looking at this year's numbers. Average fastball velocity sitting at 96.2, averaging 63 pitches per game. But the underlying numbers here are not great. 7.97 Sierra, 6.15 xFIP, and an ERA almost at 7. He's got a good K rate at 30%, but he's got a 33% walk rate so far. And like I said, he's walking a ton of guys, 16 walks per 9 innings right now. Low batting average, no ISO, but if the walks are going to start, they're going to start catching up to him to the point where he's going to start giving up a lot of runs because these underlying numbers are really, really scary. So if he can get his control under control, I guess that's the word for it. I mean, I think he's a good play here. It's just you got to be careful because the walks are scary. I hate playing pitchers that are going to walk a ton of guys, but it's a young season, so I think he's going to right the ship there, and he's got a 63% ground ball rate, so he's keeping the ball on the ground, which I do like. What I don't like is seeing this 40% hard contact rate, but I'm willing to take a shot on Ohtani here just because of the plus matchup versus the Texas Rangers, and we're looking at really small sample sizes so far, so I'm not going to really care too much about the awful underlying numbers because I think he's a very talented pitcher and he's shown plenty of success in the past, and the Rangers do have a 30.9% K rate versus righties so far this season. Some actually other decent numbers here, but overall not a lineup that scares me too much. Maybe a guy like Joey Gallo can give him some trouble, but even then he's going to strike out half the time pretty much. And he's a pretty decent favorite here, 61% chance for a win, 6.5 K prop over in Vegas, which is right on par with Charlie Morton and Trevor Rogers. There's no implied team total yet for the Rangers, but if I had to guess, it's probably going to be very similar to Morton and Trevor Rogers in terms of like around 3.6, 3.5. So Ohtani at $7,700 I think is a perfectly fine play today. And with that being said, that's going to be it for the pitching. So let's move on to the bats. And as per usual, we'll start with the catcher position, move around the diamond, and hit the outfield as well. And to be honest, outside of the Yankees today, there's not a lot of offenses to love. The Braves are in a decent spot. The Oakland A's got Rich Hill, who's given up 4 runs every single start so far. But it's just kind of like an okay bat slate. I like the pitching today. I think there's some really interesting pitching spots, but I feel like the Yankees are going to be super chalky today just because they're kind of the obvious spot in Camden Yards going up against Matt Harvey, who's been a punching bag in the past. I know he hasn't been awful this year, but it's only a matter of time. The Angels are in an okay spot versus Jordan Lyles. I know he's not been terrible, but I'm just not really a fan of Jordan Lyles. I think I'd rather always take the Angels bats, which I feel like they played him several times so far. So I don't know. We'll see how the bats go. But anyway, Gary Sanchez, $4,800. If you're stacking the Yankees, Gary Sanchez is always an option. I'm not usually a big fan of playing Gary Sanchez, to be honest. I feel like he never does well for me, but I don't know why. But I have a great feeling about the Yankees and Baltimore today, which I guess I know why. It's Camden Yards. You get the guaranteed ninth inning at bats. It's a hitter-friendly park, and Matt Harvey's in the mound. But I'm just having a really good feeling about them. I feel like, was it 2 years ago? Every time the Yankees went to the Orioles Stadium, they were just absolutely murdered the ball. I think Gleyber Torres had, but didn't Sanchez? He had some insane numbers versus them. I forget the exact numbers, but either way, I like Sanchez here. He's got power versus both sides, or not both sides, I should say, both-handedness. Matt Harvey, not a great pitcher. Since last season, Harvey has given up a 7.55 ERA, 4.5 xFIP, so I guess I would say he's getting a little bit unlucky in that category. 4.45 CR, only 17% K rate, not really walking guys too much, but a 354 batting average given up, 417 WOBA, and a 240 ISO, so plenty of upside here. I prefer lefties versus him, but the righties in this lineup are the ones you typically want. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, DJ LeMahieu, Gary Sanchez, Gleyber Torres, Giovanni Urshela, who I don't think I even have on here, but he's always viable as well. And Aaron Hicks is a switch hitter, so he'll be one of the lefties, one of the few lefties in this lineup today. Clint Frazier, but I do like Gary Sanchez just because he's got some power versus both lefties and righties. Travis d'Arnaud, $4,600, maybe a better overall hitter, maybe not the same kind of power that Sanchez has, but Travis d'Arnaud, over the course of the past couple of seasons, he's been a guy that can hit for a high batting average. So far this year, not really working out too much, only a 242 WOBA with a 190 batting average, but he's still a fine hitter. Zach Davies, not the greatest pitcher out there, and ending in Atlanta, it's supposed to be pretty warm there today, so it's always going to be a boost for bats, and I would say the Braves have the advantage here over Zach Davies. They have a 4.81 implied team total, which is second right now, only behind the New York Yankees. And one thing I should mention when I was talking about offenses, I kind of forgot to mention the Houston Astros. I think they're in a really good spot today versus Sheffield, so didn't mean to skip over them. I think with them not having a team total yet kind of threw me off a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if that gets close to 5 today, because they've been on fire for the most part, and Sheffield's not that. I mean, he's got some upside in some spots, but I don't think it's going to be this spot here versus Houston. So, yeah, I think the Houston Astros bats are pretty good today. I didn't mean to leave them off. And then Sean Murphy, $3,900. I was thinking about putting Martin Maldonado here just because he's pretty cheap. So if you're stacking up the Astros, I think he's an option. But Sean Murphy here versus a lefty and Rich Hill, who's not been so good this season. I think he's a fine option. He's always hit lefties decently well in the past for a catcher. So if you are stacking up the Astros, or not the Astros, the Oakland A's, or if you just have $3,900 left at the catcher position, Sean Murphy fits the bill there. Freddie Freeman going down to first base, he's $6,000, but I do like the Braves here versus Zach Davies. He's not a pitcher that's going to strike out a lot of guys. He's going to give up a lot of contact. Looking at his numbers since last season, he's been good in the ERA department, 3.83, but his xFIP's at 4.48, kind of right on par with the Sierra. 20% K rate, close to a double-digit walk rate. Give up around 150 ISO. So not a terrible pitcher, not one you typically try to pick on too much, but also not a pitcher that you can't pick on either. And Freddie Freeman's one of the best players in baseball, especially versus right-handed pitching. So if you are stacking the Braves today, makes sense to get free money Freddie in there. Yuli Gurriel, $4,600. Kind of mentioned that. I forgot to mention that the Houston Astros are a good stack today, but I do like Yuli Gurriel. He's been playing pretty well this season. 91 plate appearance sample size, but he's batting .333, 437 WOBA, 227 ISO, 195 WRC plus, and some overall pretty good numbers. Hitting in the middle of this lineup, he's got plenty of our RBI opportunity here, so I can definitely get behind some Yuli Gurriel today in Astros stacks. And then Jared Walsh, $4,300. Like the Angels today, no team total out yet, but it's probably going to be in the upper fours. I'm not sure it's going to reach 5, because if the Yankees are only at 5.05, going against Matt Harvey and Camden Yards, I'd have a hard time seeing the Angels versus Jordan Lyles getting above that. So if I had to guess, that's probably going to be 4.7. That'll be my guess today. We'll see if I'm close. But 4.7 sounds like a pretty good number, but this is the cheapest Walsh has been in a little bit, because he's been in that 5K range, upper 4K range. So 4,300 looks pretty good to me on the eye test. And he's got a 300 batting average so far this year, 394 WOBA, 239 ISO, 161 WRC plus. Those numbers get better versus righties, so I can get behind some Jared Walsh today. I think he's a halfway decent option there. Ozzie Albies going down to second base, $5,300, going against Zach Davies. Kind of reasons already mentioned with Freddie Freeman and Travis d'Arnaud. I think the Braves are looking like one of the better stacks on today's slate, so Albies, I prefer him versus lefties, but he's still a fine option here. Batting cleanup for an offense I like a lot today. I can definitely get behind some Ozzie Albies. Sorry, if you saw the video cut really quick, and if you see a black little fur ball right here, my dog wanted to jump on my lap, so I had to pause the video really quick. But anyway, Going down to second base, we already talked about Ozzie Albies. So DJ LeMahieu here, $5,000 leading off for the top offense on the slate, in my opinion. Just a guy that doesn't really strike out much, has a lot of contact, has some decent pop in his bat as well. So I have nothing really bad to say about DJ LeMahieu, maybe besides the price point, but he's also eligible at first base as well. So yeah, I like LeMahieu quite a bit. The only problem is the price point. Not sure if I'm going to be able to get there in cash games. I would like to, but I also want to play guys like Stanton and Aaron Judge, and also Gary Sanchez. So it's going to be tough. I'll have to figure out if I can fit him in, but he's an elite option either way. I already mentioned stuff about Matt Harvey, so I don't have to go into that once again, but LeMahieu is definitely an elite option on this slate. Then if you want to save some money, David Fletcher here, $3,200 home against Jordan Lyles. Kind of reasons already mentioned with Yuli Gurriel. I think the Angels are a halfway decent stack today. I wouldn't say they're my favorite stack, but I mean, a couple of these guys are pretty cheap, and I do think the Angels are, I mean, they got a really good lineup. I know Anthony Rendon's out, so it's going to hurt them a little bit, but guys like David Fletcher and Mike Trout, unfortunately, no Shohei Ohtani, because, he's playing an AL team, so he can't bat today, which sucks because it's one of their best bats, but so it's going to take a little bit of a hit to their offense. So maybe I should say their team total would be down to 4.6 since Ohtani can't hit, because obviously he's got one of the best bats in the lineup, probably right behind Trout right now because Anthony Rendon's out. So it does take a little bit of hit to their offense, but I can definitely get behind some David Fletcher at that price point, leading off for a team that I don't think is the worst stack in the world today. He hasn't been great this year. He's hitting for virtually no power, .011 ISO, 261 batting average, but the season's still young. I'd expect those numbers to creep up a bit. Last year, David Fletcher was a guy that didn't really strike out whatsoever, had a high batting average. That really hasn't been the case this year in terms of the high batting average and getting on base, but I would assume that would change as the season progresses. Going down to third base, we have Alex Bregman, $5,000 going against a lefty at home, and anytime Bregman faces a lefty, he'll be one of the top stacks, one of the top plays on the entire slate, because there's plenty of home run upside because he absolutely murders left-handed pitching. So far this season, the strikeouts have been up, only a 27 plate appearance sample size. I think last year is below 10% versus lefties, but he's got a 444 on base percentage, OPS above 1,000, 250 ISO, 451 WOBA, and a 375 batting average. So Bregman's definitely one of the top plays on today's slate, one of the top home run calls as well. Matt Chapman, $4,900. So I hate the park. They're going to Tampa Bay in the Trop, which is always a bad place to use bats. But he is facing a lefty, and Matt Chapman's always had some good splits versus lefties. I know their team total is pretty low at 4.35, but outside of just the top teams today, the secondary teams are just looking a little kind of gross. So if you want a contrarian stack, I don't think a lot of people will be on the A's today, so I think Matt Chapman's a decent contrarian play today, because for $100 more, you can get Alex Bregman. I think everyone would much rather play Alex Bregman today, including me. So if you're just looking for an ownership pivot, but some decent upside. I mean, Rich Hill's a guy that has struggled versus righties. I think Matt Chapman's a decent play there, but I mean, overall, especially in cash games, I would prefer going to Alex Bregman. And if you just need a cheap play, Rougned Odor, $3,100. I think he batted cleanup yesterday, but the Sunday lineups can get a bit crazy. But Odor's a guy where he's going to strike out quite a bit, but he's got decent pop in his bat. And so far this year, 225 ISO, but a 175 batting average, and the strikeout rate is sitting at 13%, which is actually a bit surprising because he's one of those guys that's usually a lot higher. So I would assume those numbers are going to come up, but he is facing a low strikeout pitcher for the most part versus Matt Harvey today. So if you just want a cheap Yankees bat, some cheap exposure, you could also use him in a wraparound stack if he is batting last, where if you go like 1, 2, 3, you could play the guy playing a ninth. So it's kind of still like good correlation wise. I don't think Rougned Odor is a bad play today because Matt Harvey does historically struggle versus lefties the past couple seasons, and Rougned Odor is a lefty, so pretty good spot for a guy that's really cheap on the best offense on the slate right now. And then dropping out of shortstop, we have Carlos Correa, $5,400. Ever since he moved up to the leadoff spot, he's been playing some pretty good baseball, and so far this season he's batting 284, 350 WOBA, 198 ISO, 134 WRC+. Not like astronomically good numbers, but good enough where I know he's expensive at $5,400, but the Astros have been playing very well recently, so I can definitely get behind some Carlos Correa today. Gleyber Torres should be batting cleanup for arguably the best offense in the slate today. You could make a case for the Astros, you could make a case for the Braves, but I personally prefer the Yankees the most today. I think they're probably going to score the most runs, and I would like to get a lot of exposure to them. But Torres, he's at a fair price point. He's about $1,000 cheaper than Carlos Correa, and I know so far this season the numbers have been pretty bad. 257 WOBA with a 213 average and a 66 WRC+, but facing Matt Harvey can fix some things for you. And then Dansby Swanson, $3,900, just part of the Brave stack. So if you're stacking Astros, you play Correa. If you're stacking the Yankees, you play Torres. And if you're stacking the Braves, you play Swanson. It's kind of as simple as that. And then dropping into the outfield, we have Mike Trout, $6,300, and it's kind of a similar story here. If you're stacking Angels, you use Trout. Stacking Braves, you use Acuna. If you're stacking Yankees, you use Aaron Judge. But Mike Trout, anytime he's facing a pretty average righty, he's one of the top home run calls on the slate because the guy absolutely murders right-handed pitching over the course of his career. So versus righties, 586 WOBA, 524 ISO, 294 WRC plus, OPS close to 1500. Is striking out quite a bit this year at a 27% clip, but also a walk rate close to 20%. 50% hard contact rate, just absolutely murdering the baseball. So Mike Trout, I mean, yeah, if you had the money for him, but I think he's a fine play. But you definitely don't have to get up there in cash games because I prefer other offenses today, and he's just super expensive. Ronald Acuna, $6,200. Similar category here, but he's great versus both lefties and righties. I mean, Mike Trout's obviously good versus lefties as well. It's just his numbers versus righties are insanely good. But Acuna, I mean, he's got some similar numbers to Trout so far this season. Also, more plate appearances as well, but a 356 batting average, 502 WOBA, 390 ISO, 216 WRC plus. Not quite on Trout's level, but if Trout wasn't here, I mean, these numbers for Acuna would be really, really bright green like Trout is. So I definitely can get behind some Acuna today if you're stacking the Atlanta Braves, because if you're not stacking the Braves, just finding a one-off at $6,200 is a tough thing to do. Aaron Judge, $5,900. Like, if I had to pick one of these guys, I'm probably going to go with Judge just to get some more exposure to the Yankees. And if I had to pick one for cash games, it probably would be Judge just because I like the Yankees bats overall today. Although Giancarlo Stanton's $1,000 cheaper, so I could see him being more popular than Judge today. But Judge, he crushes lefties, he crushes righties. I like all the Yankees today. I think it's pretty simple there. Giancarlo Stanton. So here's Aaron Judge. He's just a lot cheaper, so I feel like more people will get to him. But so far this season for Stanton, I mean, the numbers aren't amazing. 186 batting average, 283 WOBA. The power's been there, though. 230 ISO, but 84 WRC plus, a 30% K rate. Now they're walking too much, and a 53% ground ball rate. The hard contact's there, though. I feel like every time he hits the ball, it's just an absolute missile. 44.7% hard contact rate, but I mean, I like the price point. I wish he was a little bit cheaper like he was a few days ago. I remember Stanton was like, wasn't he like 4,300 versus the Indians? Then he went double dong and his price went up. But I do like Stanton today. Like all the Yankees, Mark Canha, $4,100. He's been playing well recently, leading off versus a lefty and Rich Hill, who hasn't been amazing so far this year. And Mark Canha has been pretty solid. He's got a 400 on base percentage. So if you're just looking for a kind of a mid-range guy and a good spot in the order on a pretty decent offense, Mark Canha is your guy there. Then Aaron Hicks, $3,300 from against Matt Harvey. He's not having the greatest season in the world, but still, I can use any bat versus Matt Harvey. I feel like we have the entire lineup here besides a couple of guys like Clint Frazier and Giovanni Urshela, but you can play all the Yankees today. Obviously, you can't play all of them in the same lineup, but you just want to mix and match them in some other lineups. So let's say you do a top of the order Yankee stack in one lineup, and then you use the bottom half of the order in another lineup and get exposure to other teams. I think that could be maybe a decent way to go today, because it's going to be hard to play all the Yankees. Like, if you want to play a LeMahieu, Stanton, a Judge, you're eating up a lot of salary in your lineup, so you might have to like pick and choose those guys and fill them in with some cheaper Yankees bats just to make those things work. With that being said, guys, I think it's going to be it for the video, so I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Really do appreciate it. You can follow me over on Twitter at ChrisPennell16 and CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that. We got over 300 members, projections, optimizers, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. Feel free to drop in and tell me hi and just chat it up with the group. But I think that's going to be it, guys. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. It's Monday, and a lot of people don't like Mondays, but I don't know. I have nothing motivational to say. I guess Mondays kind of suck. So hope you guys make the best of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.